Good morning and welcome to this NewsLink Indiana special report. I'm Brittany Ehrman. After receiving an anonymous tip that a Ball State instructor may be a convicted felon, our news gathering partners at the Daily News launched a month-long investigation, finding out that not only was that true, but also that the hiring procedures at the state and university levels may say that no crime is too great. The Department of Computer Science hired Jason Bowie in 2013 with knowledge that he served 15 years in prison and was convicted for arson and conspiracy to commit murder. The state of Indiana and Ball State have ambiguous procedures on the hiring of former convicts. And right now I'm joined by reporter Max Lewis and news editor Brandon Meacham. Now first, let's talk a little bit about that conviction and how this crime started.
Yeah, so this whole crime started actually with a Muncie businessman. His name was Scott McCord. He had an employee. Her name was Etta Alexander, and basically he wanted her dead. And so he was trying to seek people to kind of do this sort of hit job for him. And he ended up finding this man, John Sheets, and the instructor that we just referenced and you're seeing on your screen, Mr. Jason Bowie. And he's an instructor here. And basically what happened is these two men went to her trailer late at night, and she was shot and killed, and her body was burned along with her house. And so, you know, there's a lot of conflicting, reports. One says the other did it, the other says the other did it. Both have maintained their innocence the entire time, but there's just a lot of conflicting reports about this. And they were both, Mr. Bowie was actually convicted, or was charged with murder, conspiracy to commit murder, arson, and Mr. Sheets pled guilty to a charge of assisting a criminal.
Okay, so in terms of sentencing, where did Bowie go from there?
So he was actually convicted on all of those charges, murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and arson. He was sentenced to 100 years in prison. But he appealed, and it went to the Indiana Supreme Court, where the court ruled that he couldn't face that murder charge and the conspiracy to commit murder at the same time because of the double jeopardy clause in the U.S. Constitution that says we can't be tried we can't be charged twice for the same crime. And so they overturned that murder conviction. He was actually sentenced to then 40 years for the conspiracy to commit murder and arson charges.
Okay, and again, Bowie is a computer science instructor here at Ball State, and obviously you need an educational background to be able to do that. So can you talk a little bit about how he obtained that background and what kind of education he has?
Yeah, so while he was in jail, he actually got 2 associate's degrees, one from Indiana University and one from here at Ball State. He went on to get a bachelor's at Ball State and also 2 master's degrees, and we actually spoke with him yesterday, and he has told us he was working on a doctorate degree as well. So he's very educated and has a lot of education. Started that in prison and continued it once he was out.
Okay, and a big question that we're all wondering, that we're all asking, is how was he hired? How was Bowie hired at Ball State?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like Max mentioned, he did have a master's degree. He was going through the master's program here at Ball State, so he was familiar with the school and with some of the people. Now, because he was a part-time instructor, he does not have to go through a search committee. So the decision fell on his department chair, which is Paul Buis. And so what Mr. Buis has told us is that in the hiring of Mr. Bowie, he consulted other faculty members, and he got character references to ensure that Bowie was up to the standards that the university would expect.
Okay, and now again, Bowie was convicted for arson and conspiracy to commit murder. I mean, when you're looking at the fine line here, is there a fine line that says conviction is too big where you can't be hired?
After speaking with a lot of HR, human resources representatives, I've kind of found that there isn't a line. What I've been told is that it's on a case-by-case basis, and that, the conviction would really only affect a job if the job coincided with what the conviction was for.
Okay, and is this procedure just at Ball State? Is this everywhere? How are we looking at this?
We really compared it to a lot of other Indiana colleges. So colleges like Indiana University, Purdue, Ivy Tech, they have similar policies. It's kind of vague, but a lot of those universities, actually all of them, do require a background check. What's different is that Ball State does not require a person to pre-disclose their conviction before the background check is run. So at the other universities, they have to say, you know, hey, I have this previous conviction, and you're going to find that if you run a background check.
Okay, and then in terms of reaction, I mean, this is some people will say this is a big deal, and in terms of the university, how are they reacting to this? I mean, what are they saying?
So, the university is actually being very supportive of him. He obtained his associate's degree in Ball, the one I mentioned earlier, in prison from Ball State through this program that Ball State was running through the prison. So he earned it through there. He was a graduate assistant, and they say he's, a good employee, and they're glad they hired him, and they're glad he's on staff right now.
Okay, and then when you look from the perspective of students and faculty, people that are possibly in his classes, I mean, have you gotten any reaction from them? What are they saying?
Yeah, so that reaction's been a little different.
Okay.
And we actually spoke with a student who, wanted to remain anonymous, and they basically told us that they were wondering, where is Ball State going to draw the line? If they don't draw the line at murder, where do they draw it? Now, I do want to mention that murder conviction was overturned, but that conspiracy to commit murder was still a big deal to this student. And they just wondered, where does the university draw the line? And they said that they were kind of concerned about that, and him, being a teacher. And also, we talked to the original detective on the case. This was back in the 1990s. He said, that if Mr. Bowie has done his time, which he was in prison, and he's rehabilitated, then that's how the system's supposed to work in his eyes. But also, he said that he doesn't know if he'd be comfortable with his grandchildren being in a class with him. So this is the university has one reaction. Some people we talk to have a different reaction.
Yeah, a lot of different perspectives on this topic. But is there anything else you guys want to add? Any more important information that we should know?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's important. In this story, we do talk about this crime, but it's also a lot about the hiring process, and that's kind of our big focus here. And there's just a lot of parts to the story, and we hope you read it.
Okay, and then you guys have done a lot of reporting in the past weeks with this, and we really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks,
okay?
Brittany.
Thanks for joining us. All right, and thank you guys at home for tuning in for this special report. You can go ahead and read this full story on ballstatedaily.com, and be sure to follow us on Twitter and go ahead and like us on Facebook. Have a great night.